So you served on the board of Tenet before becoming CEO. How did that help inform the board's transformation over the past few years?
Well, obviously, being on the board, it gave me a perspective that I would not have had I just walked in from the outside. I knew many of the people. I had interfaced with many of the people over the years, had discussions. So I was familiar with the nature of the company, the issues in the company. But as most board members, you're not really down in what I would call the engine room of the company. That's not what a board member does. And so it helped the transition and probably made the efficiency and effectiveness of my ability to uh, blend into the company and become a part of the fabric much faster had I just come from the outside.
Ron was on the board with me, and when the previous CEO left, we recruited Ron to come in on an interim basis, and he had previous experience as a CEO, and he performed so well. I mean, really extraordinary. And what we were searching for a new CEO, but he was performing so well. By that I mean quality is going up. He was hiring people, even though he was sort of an acting interim CEO. He was doing such a good job that we negotiated a contract with him. And what he's done that's really quite amazing, particularly during the pandemic, is he is, I would say, I don't know if he agrees on the fraction, but he's 75 or 80% through a transformation process. It's a different company today than it was, certainly than it was 2.5 years ago, but it's a different company today than it was. I mean, we've got better people. We've got better quality performance. We've got a different mix of business from hospitals and ambulatory care facilities. But the most important thing is throughout this entire transformation, from anybody trying to figure out what did Ron Rittenmeyer do that made him a success, any failure, anything that went wrong, he took the responsibility for it. He didn't pass it off on somebody else. He didn't say the dogs ate my homework. He didn't blame it on subordinates. He stepped up, and as a consequence, everybody acquired what became for the company a community of care. We're all in this together, and it's on Ron's leadership that made that happen.
Well, we decided that the what was important as we started to do the transformation that we also took a really deep look at the tenure of our board members as well as the skill sets that they provided. So fairly quickly, it was clear that it was time to rotate some members off. We were fortunate. We had it. It was a very good board. But having said that, transformation requires people without uh, too many years of, or without the roots being too deep. They need to be willing to think of new ideas, take some risk, and understand that in the context of what you're trying to accomplish overall.
Now you've got another fork in the road. Is there an internal candidate? And we didn't have one. So now we do a search, and we put somebody in on an interim basis. In this case, he turned out to be really good. Now you've got another fork in the road. Do you wait till at the end of his term and then have a search, or can we recruit his successor? And we chose the latter. And Ron, recruited Sam.
And I think the largest move I made was in bringing in Sam Satara, who was a McKinsey consultant that led their healthcare practice, had spent many years at Tenet and you name it, probably every health system in the United States. He has had his hands in. Very knowledgeable doctor, cardiac doctor, surgeon, very aware of what the needs were. And the goal was transforming his role from advising to one of action.
When Sam first started, he knew the healthcare industry cold. He's a physician and surgeon himself. He worked for McKinsey. He knew everything about Tenet. But what he didn't have is the capacity to make those decisions that a CEO has to make. Some, I think, would agree with me on this, and he doesn't have to, but I think he would agree and say he couldn't have had a better mentor than Ron. And making the transition from somebody who up in his head, knew everything about Tenet. But what he didn't have is the experience of making those decisions. And over time, Ron has just steady improved his capacity. Now, the board hasn't made a decision that we're going to offer the CEO position to Sam. But as an example of how Ron's doing the preparation, Ron said, okay, he's going to have to be a board member. Why wait until you offer him the CEO job to make him a board member? Let's put him on the board now. And so we considered that, we discussed that, we voted, and we appointed Sam as a board member. Now he sees what it looks like, both from the operational point of view as well as from the board point of view.
Obviously, for me, I'm under contract to the end of 2022, so I will be replaced. And we've done that. The reason we brought in Sam was we thought he'd be a great internal candidate, which he has turned out to be. But really, the board makes this decision, and they have to look across both internal and external candidates and make sure we have selected what they believe is the best person for the job. Obviously, it's better if you can move people up through the internal network, because then you have experienced people with a lot of knowledge.
Ron has never failed to bring something to me that I need to know in order to do my job. I trust him completely. I never ever suspect, and you can't spend 16 years in politics without the capacity to be able to judge whether or not somebody's withholding something that they don't want to tell you that you need to know. And he's been terrific that way, very transparent. I talk to him regularly. I don't know, several times a week, and he'll send me communications he's thinking about putting out, and if he invites me to give him my comments, which he almost always does, I'll give him my comments. And if he doesn't ask for my comments, I typically give them anyway. So we just develop a very good relationship as a consequence. I think it's really important to get a diversity of views based upon a different set of experiences on the board, because it improves the likelihood that the board is going to do what a board member is supposed to do, which is to provide strategic support for the CEO and help the CEO make good decisions.